Welcome to the November 6, 2012 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian.
Here.
Najarian. Here. Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Council Member Manukian and the invocation by Chaplain Al Garcilaso.
Please stand as we renew our commitment to our nation and our flag, being mindful that today is Election Day, and to perform our duties as is subscribed by our Constitution. Ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation.
Let us pray. Dear God, we are grateful to be here on this historic night as we elect a president and choose other elected officials. I pray that you will bless our country, that you will bless our leaders, and that you will also bless our citizens. Please grant us the vision, and your wisdom as we participate in this general election. And now, as we gather here for this City Council meeting, I pray that you will bless every aspect of our meeting. Please fill us with your Spirit and grant us your peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Mr. Clerk, may we have the report?
The agenda for the November 6, 2012 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Thursday, November 1st, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
What's next?
Next is presentation and appointments. At 3A is the agenda preview for the meeting of November 13, 2012.
Ms. Spears.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, for the Glendale Housing Authority for November 13th, we have no business agenda items. For that afternoon to commence at 3 p.m., we do have a Glendale City Council and a Housing Authority meeting, and we have two items. First is Director of Community Development. This is proposed issuance of approximately $13 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds in support of Park Paseo, a Glendale affordable senior housing residential facility owned and operated by Southern California Presbyterian Homes. Second, we have Director of Community Services and Parks, and this is regarding program planning for the fiscal year 13-14 CDBG and Home Annual Action Plan. Also, that afternoon, we do have a special public meeting of the Glendale City Council, and we have one item. This is Director of Public Works. This is regarding the public sale of surplus city-owned properties located at 765 and 749, Glenmore Boulevard, as well as 1644, 48, and 52 Gladys Drive. That evening for the City Council meeting to start at 6 p.m., we have a couple of items under consent: Director of Community Services and Parks, appropriation of funds for the 2011-12 Emergency Solutions Grant Program. General Manager of Glendale Water and Power, this is a license agreement template to attach to city facilities. And we have a number of action items that evening. Director of Human Resources, this is an amendment to the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Glendale and the Glendale Firefighters Association. This is cleanup language. City Attorney, findings in support of denial of parcel map Glendale 1628 for property located at 2116 Rimcrest Drive. City Treasurer, we have the City Treasurer's quarterly investment review as of September 30th of 2012. And lastly, the two items, City Manager and Director of Administrative Services. This is our first quarter budget update and key performance indicators. And lastly, City Attorney. This is language for the proposed charter amendments. And that concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Next, please.
At 3B is presentation of a commendation to Mayor Frank Quintero from Glendale Advanced Medical Center for his participation in the 2012 Army of Pink.
Well, I don't see anyone here on that item.
I would like to, Mr. Mayor, congratulate you for participating.
I participated. I didn't campaign, but I was a willing participant, and, I think they raised quite a bit of money, and obviously it's a fight against cancer. Those of us who watch football, you see all of the football players wearing pink, right, something or other, so it's an interesting concept that seems to have caught on. So maybe we'll do it next week, and I'll find out who won. Okay, next.
Next is City Council and staff comments.
Ms. Menuchyan.
I want to reemphasize the fact that today is Election Day, and for everyone who has not voted yet, I'm sure everyone has, but to get out and vote, that's number one. Number two, finally, after many months of pushing, we have the Glendale Trail Safety Patrol program in place. Today I got my application to participate in the mountain bike unit. There will also be a hiking unit. If you're not into mountain biking, you can, of course, help the city of Glendale by participating in the hiking unit. And if you're interested, the responsibilities will be notifying the city of Glendale regarding park trails or other facilities in need of repair or protection, injured or endangered wildlife, vandalism of resources, hazardous activities, and et cetera, and hazardous conditions in the trails in the mountains around Glendale. It's a great program. I will be participating in it. And if you're interested in this program or the hiking unit or the biking unit, you can contact the Community Services and Parks Division. They will give you the application with a bunch of applications that you can complete and be part of this great program. I also want to take this opportunity to thank everyone, staff that has worked hard. I know they've been through a number of versions of this program, and they've worked hard. I would like to thank Mark Sturdivant for his work and his commitment to this program as well. So, as well as the city attorney's office for straightening out some wrinkles along the way. So, thank you very much.
Anything else? Ms. Friedman?
Sure. I just want to say that I was at the polls today voting, and we had, I thought, a really good turnout. I know there were long lines in the morning. When I went in the afternoon, it was, I'd say, brisk business they were doing. So I echo Mr. Menuchyan's sentiment that everybody vote. But I want to say a special thanks to all of the people who volunteered for their candidates or for their causes. I had the pleasure of tabling and registering people to vote at the Harvest Market in Montrose a few times with the Democratic Club that was up there, and right next to us was the Republican Club. And, you know, whatever your party affiliation, I'm just glad that people participate. It's what makes our country great. It's that dialogue, that discussion, and that involvement. So for everyone in the community who phone banked, who posted on Facebook, who traveled out of state maybe to knock on doors, whatever your level of involvement, I thank all of those who were involved and who were engaged. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Mr. Weaver?
Two things. I'd like to put the name of Daniel Herman for Design Review Board on the agenda. And secondly, I think I have a flyer going up. Starting today, you can now sign up to work on the Rose Float. Here's what it's going to look like, I hope. It's www.glendaleroseFloat2013.ivolunteer.com. Try to get everybody to sign up online. Email blast is going out to some 15 high schools and middle schools tomorrow. This is for a large part for adults that obviously aren't going to get the blast that might be interested working it. I've had people up in their 70s working on the float, including myself. So if you'd like to do it for once, have a good time, come on out, join a few hundred others that come every day to do this for the city of Glendale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. Anything from the staff? All right. Next, please.
Next item on the agenda is the consent items, including the minutes, following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so before motion is proposed.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Here? Yes.
Menuchyan,
Here, yes, as well.
We had a lot of meetings today.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Next item is oral communications. This is a 3-minute portion reserved for community announcements.
All right, I have 3 cards. I'll start with Debbie Martin, followed by Leon Mayer.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here representing the Arthritis Foundation. 1 in 5 Americans have arthritis, some form of arthritis, and over 300 children suffer from arthritis, which is something no child should ever have to go through with the pain. The Arthritis Foundation is doing much research, trying to find a cure and to help those that suffer from arthritis to alleviate their pain. We have one of our biggest fundraisers coming up here in the beautiful city of Glendale, taking place in front of the Alex Theater. It's a 5K run walk for arthritis. We are sponsored by the very philanthropic Glendale Adventist Medical Center, with other local Glendale businesses supporting us, including Massage Envy and Stewart Title, among many others. And we would like to invite any or all of you to come out to our event. Mr. Mayor, any of the council members, we would love to have you speak at our opening program in the morning and or hand out medals after the run. It's a really great, fun event. It is a holiday themed. Our attendees come out dressed in costumes. They have teen costumes. It's just a really festive event, and we would like to ask any of you to, if you want to participate, that would be wonderful too. It is a run walk because many of our folks that'll be there are people suffering from arthritis and or people that have family members that have arthritis, so they'll be walking. Anyway, that's what I'd like to ask you to do, so I hope you'll be able to support us.
All right, and give us the date and location again.
December 9th in front of the Alex Theater, walking through the streets of beautiful downtown Glendale, and it'll be all decorated for the holidays, through the Americana, and ending back in front of the Alex Theater. There'll be festival zones and booths. It's a very family-oriented event with a kids zone with bouncy houses, face painting, cotton candy, popcorn, and a lot of your local vendors, Granville Cafe and others, will be serving food. And there's a VIP tent, which you all would be invited to, and Maggiano's Little Italy is catering that.
Okay, that means you can come back again if it's December
Again
9th.
and again. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Leon Mayer, followed by Ron Farina.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, members of the council and staff. My name is Leon Mayer. I'm here on behalf of the Friends of the Library and the Glendale Library. And this is a heads up for tomorrow night for Dr. Peter Dreyer. The book is The 100 Greatest Americans of the 20th Century, a Social Justice Hall of Fame. And I'm not going to spend time reading any more names that are in the book, famous names. But this is a great book by a great author who has a great background. He got his doctorate at the University of Chicago, and he's been in Occidental for the last 20 years. And he has been at work. He's a professor of politics and environmental policy at Occidental College. He's for 3 decades been involved in urban policy as a scholar, a government official, a journalist, and an advocate for reform. He's a Pasadena resident, and of course, we're joining with the Occidental College celebrating their 125th anniversary this year. And to say something further about him, he's going to be honored by Glendale College president will be there tomorrow night. Somebody from the Board of Education will be there tomorrow night, and we're presenting books to the schools and to the college. So be there. It's going to be a good crowd. 7 o'clock, parking is validated. And I've given out flyers to most everybody. If you wave your hand if you didn't get one yet. Now, I have another important announcement to make, if you can bear with me. We have a young readers program, and at our various branches we have all sorts of activities going on all the time. And we're having this activity at the Central Library Auditorium as part of the One Book, One Glendale for younger readers. We started as One Book, One Glendale about 4 or 5 years ago. This one is just for younger readers, or the recommendation. The book is Flipped, F-L-I-P-P-E-D, and the author is Gwendolyn Van Drenen. She's famous in the country. She is one of the 100 top children's novelists of all time, and she's going to be at the library on Thursday, November 15th, 7 o'clock p.m., and she's been selected by the children's librarians all over the country as one of the top 100 children's novelists. So I urge you to get this on your schedule. All this information is available at the branch libraries and at the central library. And I'll be back next week to tell you more about Gwendolyn Van Dran and the book Flipped, which is a famous book that share with your children, your grandchildren. They'll be glad to come and see her. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron Farina.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Ron Farina. I'm the Executive Director of the American Red Cross. I wanted to invite the entire community to one of our Red Cross bloodmobiles. They've been running at the Glendale Civic Auditorium for a couple of years now. It's a pretty convenient location, and it's a pretty easy process. There are going to be some drives coming up. The next one is November the 8th, followed by the one on the 17th, and also one on the 20th. It's easy to make a reservation or appointment. You just call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or you can go to redcrossblood.org and make an appointment. I was on the website today. You put in your zip code, and it'll bring you right to the nearest blood drive. But for Glendale area, this seems to be the closest one, and it's a regular one. These are happening every week or every 2 weeks, and it's a need that we're going to have long term. We've always had shortages in this area. It's just been a constant within the LA County area. And as we get into the holidays, the shortage becomes a little more acute. So if you haven't done it and you're feeling up to it, your doctor says it's okay, please come and make a donation. If you used to donate, come back again, because the need is always there. And as I said, it's Glendale Civic Auditorium, the 8th, the 17th, and the 20th. Pretty convenient times. On the weekdays, it's from 2 to 8. If it falls on a Saturday, it's usually from 9 to 3. So even if you're working, you can go in after work and make a donation. The second thing I wanted to do is invite the community one last time to the 21st annual Fritz Coleman Comedy Night. This is the 21st year that Fritz Coleman has coordinated it. He recruits personally 4 top stand-up comics. They come and entertain about 20 minutes each for a set. It's a great afternoon matinee that we've set up this Sunday for 4 o'clock at the wonderful Glendale Center Theater. Glendale Center Theater is a theater in the round. It's a really intimate setting, and every seat's a good one. And the comics are very, very entertaining. We've reduced the price for the last tickets to $15, so it's a great time to come out, have a good time, and support a good cause. Appreciate so much the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Ron. Next, please.
Next item on the agenda, under adoption of ordinances at 7A, is ordinance authorizing the... I'm sorry?
I have his cards on 7A.
For a 3-minute announcement?
Yes, that oral short. That's what I meant, oral short.
Is it for an announcement, Mr. Mohill?
Yes.
For a community event?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Mike Mohill.
For speaking in the 5 minutes.
It doesn't preclude him.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero.
Before, if I can just get a clarification on this from the city attorney, does a 3-minute speaking at this portion eliminate an opportunity to speak at the 5-minute portion?
It's at the mayor's discretion. I don't think we haven't enforced that rule in quite some time, but we did in the past, so you could, at this point, announce that's the rule, but we haven't done it in quite some time.
Go ahead, Mr. Mohill.
Just for clarity, I'm only making a public announcement, so I figured that the oral section is where you make a little note saying public announcement.
Right. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Here to make a public announcement. Sometimes we have to stop and smell the roses. And coming up at the Alex Theater is the Glendale Youth Orchestra. They've been around for many years, and it's a great family event. It's amazing of the talent in our own community. These kids are great, and they have a great orchestra leader. Especially during these tough economic times, we have an opportunity to hear quality music at a great price. If you have never been to one of these concerts, you would think you're at Disney Hall without spending a great deal of money, and you do not have to drive that heavy traffic. Again, it's a great family event at the Alex Theater. not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, November the 18th, at 7 p.m. The price is right, $10. And perhaps a discount for seniors. But prices will be less than a tank of gas, less than a trip to Disney Hall, less than a traffic ticket, less than a cheap ticket at the Hollywood Bowl, less than sending your kids to college, less than Dodger and Laker tickets, and less more money than a fancy dinner or theater tickets downtown. So let's support our youth. Kids with gray hair are also encouraged to come. Your support can send a message that classical music is not dead, but alive and well in our Jewel City, Glendale. Come early, bring your kids and grandkids. The price is right. So come and meet your friends and neighbors. Hope to see you all at the Alex Theater, November the 18th at 7 p.m. It's a great family event. Thank you.
Okay, next, please.
Under adoption of ordinances at 7A is ordinance authorizing the issuance of water revenue bonds Series 2012 in an amount not to exceed $35 million. This was introduced by Councilmember Weaver on October 30th, 2012. At 7A1 is a resolution authorizing the invitation of bids for the purchase of water revenue bonds Series 2012, approving a notice of intention to sell bonds, and authorizing publication, authorizing execution and delivery of all necessary documents, and authorizing the award of all bonds. 7A2 is a resolution authorizing deposit and withdrawal of the water revenue bond Series 2012 proceeds in the local agency investment fund in the California State Treasury.
Oh, should I move it, or is there going to be discussion?
Well, I do have two
cards?
I have some questions, actually. First, I want to thank you for sending me the cash balances for the funds. It's the first time I've received a report like this. I think it's very important, and it's only for 2 months. I wonder if you keep it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, we do it every month.
I would like to get it, but not every 2 months, but a continuous for the fiscal year. I do have some concerns about the funds, but I want clarification about some of the funds that are here, like the landfill post-closure fund. I'm sure Mr. Zern is familiar with that. What are the restrictions on that fund?
Those funds can only be used for the maintenance of the landfill upon closure, and state law requires that we put those funds into that account, and it has to be based on a formula that the state puts down, and we have to cover 30 years of post-closure maintenance.
Okay. And the refuse disposal fund?
The refuse disposal fund is the fund that
Restrictions on it?
the restrictions on that are under Proposition 218.
Okay.
So that's a
So we
fund
can't
covered
borrow
by
from that fund?
218.
Borrow from you can't, but it has to be repaid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. And the fleet equipment management fund of $12 million, is that something we can't borrow against?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it is possible to borrow. That money is basically a sinking fund for replacement for all the vehicles. Typically, in any given year, if we buy a fire truck, that's could be up to $1 million, or any other vehicles. So it's the cash value basically of the accumulated depreciation. So while you could borrow against it, the purpose is there to repurchase vehicles. So I would recommend that money stay put for that purpose.
Thank you for the recommendation. I reserve the right to disagree with you.
Absolutely.
The police building project, could you refresh my memory regarding that $28 million that's there? I know there is still a debt that is encumbered against this fund as well?
That's the cash side of the certificates of participation. We use that money to, and the interest to offset the debt service payment, both principal and interest, and that balance is declining, but that's offsetting roughly $50 million in certificates of participation that we issued for the police building 10 years ago.
And the state gas tax fund, that is a restricted fund as well?
Yes, sir. Those monies can only be used for roadway rehabilitation projects. It expands a little bit to sidewalk, curb gutter, but
same question that I asked before regarding the refuse disposal fund. Can we borrow against these restricted funds?
I don't believe you can borrow against the gas tax fund.
Or, let's say, landfill post-closure fund? We can't borrow against it by
it's
state law?
Right, that's,
Okay, all right.
Wait, when you say, if I can just follow up, when you say you can't borrow against them,
we can't borrow from it.
you can't borrow from them.
From them, yes.
Right.
From one fund to the other, basically.
Right, borrow from them.
Right. Okay, that's all the questions I have. I have some concerns about some of the funds that I would like to kind of state now, and you can give me a report on them later. One is under Special Revenue Debt Service Fund, Fund 511, the Fire Paramedic Fund. Second is Fund 265, the Fire Grant Fund. And the third is the Transit Utility Fund at 258. I would like to know more details about these funds. Outside of that, I'll hold off on any other questions.
Any other comments? I have two speakers. Herbert Milano, followed by Mike Mohill.
Mayor Quintero, members of the City Council and staff, my name is Herbert Milano. I believe that during the past 4 years, during the economic recession, families have actually pared down a lot of their expenses, paid down debt, reduced their long-term obligations, and there's a significant amount of refinancing that is taking place today as families throughout and property owners try to figure out a way of reducing the overall debt. But yet we turn around and look at the City Council and you increase our debt. And you increase our debt in a way that I believe is not sufficiently transparent. You increase our debt, and yet you don't give us a history of the debt load increases for the past 10, 12 years. Where were we 10 years ago with regard to the overall debt of the city, and where are we now? Whenever the city borrows money for purposes of infrastructure work, we assume that that money will be used judiciously for the purpose of improving the infrastructure. In the case of the water utility, in 2007, 2008, we were giving some of the very same presentations we were giving at the last City Council meeting and at the previous Glendale Water and Power meetings. And there are studies that tell us how far behind we are. I'm not doubting that there is a need for infrastructure. My concern is the significant amount of transfers that have occurred at the water utility throughout all of these years. And this is the money that should have been provided for and kept at the utility for purpose of infrastructure work, and it wasn't. And now we know that it is urgent, and that it is dire, and that it impacts significantly, and yet we never got a full, comprehensive overview of really what was the overall structure of the status of that weakness in the infrastructure of the water utility. In 2007, we were told it was about $220 million worth. And yet, despite that study, you continue to transfer money away from it. Money that is used primarily to support the increases in pay and benefits combined, altogether. And they have been so significant that you have been unable to keep that money in the Glendale Water and Power to sustain the basic infrastructure. And that is the lack of transparency that I feel is unjust for taxpayers. When you get us into debt, it's $35 million now, and we wind up paying maybe $60 million by the time this bond is actually fully paid for. I think it is time to go back to pay-as-you-go, stop all the transfers from the utility, and think again as to how to maintain the utility in a way that is truly and properly prudent and solvent. Thank you.
Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor Quintero, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Glendale City Council recently raised our water rates 13% over the next 4 years. In addition, this is on top of the already 38% water rate increases residents, businesses, and schools have experienced since 2007. had our current city council and previous councils not illegally violated Proposition 218. Let me repeat that. Violated Proposition 218. Since the year 2000, with transferring approximately $4 million annually from the water fund account to the general fund, then our current council would not be discussing the need tonight for a $35 million water revenue bond to shore up the infrastructure of the GWP. Since 2007 to 2015, the stakeholders of Glendale will be seeing a 51% water rate increase. 51% during a recession. Thank you. In just 12 years, our city council has drained Glendale Water and Power of approximately $235 million into the pockets of our union employees. These monies should have stayed and used in the infrastructure of the city instead, but instead we transferred to the city employees. And last week we gave them all golden parachutes as they left the city. Tonight, our city council will be approving a $35 million water revenue bond to cover up the mistakes, I said mistakes, our city councils have made because they chose to transfer $235 million out of the GWP, monies which should have stayed in the utility for needed infrastructure repairs. Because our council mistakes, in July, Fitch Investor Service downgraded $50 million worth of water bonds issued in 2008, partially due to GWP lack of liquidity. Did I say the word liquidity? Thank you. And today, Moody Investor Service put Glendale on the credit watch as it reviews possible downgrading of future bonds. Council members, why the cover-up at the GWP? Thank you. My name is Mike Mohill.
Don't clap again, sir. That's not allowed in the chambers. You've done it twice now. Okay. Any, Ms.
Well,
Weaver?
just a couple of comments. One, we've seen the effort to reinvent history again. The transfer on the water was stopped because of advice of the city attorney. There was no legal basis for not doing it. It was not illegal. It never has been illegal. And it still isn't illegal because some cities are still doing it, correct?
Some cities are still doing it, correct.
So don't reinvent history, Mr. Mohill. Oh, I see he left again. And secondly, I went back and looked some time ago and looked at the budget for the last 10 years of this city. And during that time period, just to give you two examples, the public, when we were doing budgets, wanted more police. Well, we went out and hired 38 more police plus support staff for that. They wanted more parks. We built more parks. That money doesn't go directly to pensions and salaries. They wanted more services in this city. They stood here and asked for it. We gave it to them. I don't see anything illegal about that. We're doing what was consciously right. I've done it here for 16 years, and my colleagues have voted for the same things. Nothing illegal. We were providing the services that the city wanted. And we stopped the water now because of the advice of the city attorney. Right, Mr. Ochoa?
Yes, sir. And, well, I just want to make sure that we're very clear. The city of Glendale, like any other city with a utility, a water utility, like every other city, every city I'm aware of, had transferred funds from the utility to the city's general fund as a dividend for that host corporation. The city is a municipal corporation, and the utility is a subsidiary of that corporation, and so it's completely traditional and within reasonableness that would happen. Prop 218 was passed, and finally in if the city attorney will correct me, the year of the decision when the law was applied.
Well, 2006 was when it became a little clearer.
When 2006 decision rolled around, that's when the environment changed such that legal opinions began to circulate, saying under the dictates of Prop 218, which had not been tested before that, there is an element of risk. And being conservative and being prudent, City of Glendale ceased transferring the water revenues from water revenue to the general fund as a dividend to that host corporation. There is nothing, there is no voodoo, there is no hocus pocus regarding that. It is simply a matter of business, and business that has existed for over 100 years and longer in many other locations. Indeed, the city continues to transfer electric revenues, operating revenues from the utility as a dividend to the general fund. We have transfers in other funds as well. So to cast the aspersion that somehow you have been doing something illegal is completely reckless, and it clouds what the issue is. And as Mr. Weaver indicates, I would submit to you that the issue is not the subject predicate and public sector salaries and benefits. There is something that is much more important and much more subtle that is going on with respect to GWP. I mean, the statement that always comes out for every complex, complicated, convoluted problem, there's a very simple, a very straightforward, and very wrong answer. And I think that's what some of our folks have stumbled across in recent meetings, or maybe not even so recent meetings, because the discussion seems to be the same. At the end of the day, GWP converted cash into assets. That's what's impacting the liquidity ratio of GWP. And so I suppose I would agree with one thing that was said in terms of eroding that liquidity or further eroding that liquidity and taking still more cash on hand and converting it into assets. Because at the end of the day, what this entire discussion is about is the need for infrastructure investment, for the creation of still more assets, the protection and preservation of those infrastructure assets. The question to the council, the policy question, is how best to do that, or to do it at all, because that entirely is the council's prerogative. But when we talk about the issues of Prop 218, it's important that we understand what Prop 218 really was and really what it was not. When you look at what those pay and benefits that so often are thrown out in front of the city council and in front of the community with respect to our employees, as we talked about at length in our budget deliberations, Glendale, as a public, as a municipality, our employees pay more than any other city in our area, and I would dare say in the region and possibly even the state, for the cost of their own employment. That's an important thing to consider, because that's the thing that tends to get most folks to get their dander up, that they believe that somehow the employees aren't paying their fair share. Indeed, the most recent pension reform that was approved by the state, signed by the governor, that was much heralded, really doesn't have much of an impact on Glendale, because Glendale's already been doing that. Your employees pay a large share of the cost of their own employment, and by the way, their salaries are not much higher, if higher at all. In many cases, they're below what the market is. So cost efficiency-wise, cost effectiveness is something that, again, we can stand up with any other agency in our area, any other full-service city up and down the state of California. At the end of the day, this is entirely about the investment in public infrastructure. Do we want to do it? And if we want to do it, what is the best way to do it? That's all this has ever been about.
The answer I have to that, when you have infrastructure that is some 80 or so years old, we see the pictures of the corrosion and the loss of capacity in the system and pipes. Yeah, I say bond, so you can get the money up front, you can leverage it to do that work now, rather than sit there and watch for it to fail like so much of the LA system has.
Certainly, and I would offer one other thing that was mentioned by one of the speakers with respect to whether or not the city has presented a very clear and accurate picture about the debt load that it currently carries, and in fact we have. It's called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Review. All of our borrowings, all of our debts are listed there each and every year from 2002 going forward.
Review is the wrong word to use. It's the report. If you say review, it means something else.
I'm sorry, I
Because
am not the CPA.
It's an audited statement, and I know Mr.
Comprehensive annual, that's right. The CAFRA is the report. And yeah, I could feel Bob cringe as I said that. But the idea being that all of that is there on page 183 and page 184 that shows everything that the city carries at this point in time. Again, it's a straightforward decision that is entirely that of the city council.
Would you like a motion now?
Well, we
discussed it all last week.
I know, and it's no secret that I'm opposed to the issuance of the bonds. However, I want to make it clear that the need for capital improvements, I agree with, and I think it's necessary. It's just a matter of how we go about doing it and how we go about financing it that I disagree with. I stand on what I said last week regarding repayment of the water utility overages that were borrowed from the electric utility fund. That's $4 to $5 million annually that is being paid back to that fund. And we do have some reserves that we can borrow against. When I say borrow against, I mean borrowing from one fund to the other fund and have it paid back. And we can pay it back with higher interest rates than we're receiving from the T-bills that we are required to invest in by our city's investment policy. So I do believe that there are alternative ways of financing these capital improvements, and I think considering the way the economy is and considering the uncertainty in the economy, I think it is wise for the city to hold off on issuing additional bonds because we have issued $50 million already. In addition to that, if we include the funds that were borrowed from the electric utility bond, that would indicate that the water utility is in debt approximately $75 million at this point, $75 million. So for us to borrow another $30 million would increase that to $100 million, and I'm not, just for the water utility, and I'm not comfortable with that. Like I said, I do believe that there are alternative ways of financing the capital improvements, and I would support those alternative ways. And I've listed a few without really knowing in detail where these funds stand and the legality of borrowing from some of these funds. So that's where I am.
Mr. Mayor, but you can confirm, Mr. Cho, is this a good time to do bonding in terms of the rate structure that's out there? Historically low?
Rates are historically low. I mean, and that's what we're looking at. There is a need for the infrastructure, as Mr. Manukian points out. I think we've had the regular reports from Mr. Baruki indicating that rates are indeed historically low. So certainly with respect to the points that are made, we can argue about how we do that, or council can argue about how you do that. But I would submit to you that maintaining liquidity because of the volatility in the market is something that we should also try to balance and strive for as a priority.
The other factor, we're on Moody's watch, and I don't know if the other rating agencies looking at what this council is going to do. Our ratings most likely would drop if we don't, because we're showing no ability to handle the money and the way the rating agencies think. Is that correct?
I can't tell you what they will do, and I can only tell you what they have told us. And I'm just saying, in the meetings that we had with them, the reluctance to issue the debt that was part of a previous financial plan is something that was troubling to them. That's what they told us.
Okay.
Well, with all due respect to the comments that were made, however, last I checked, the rating agencies were not the ones making policy for the city.
Correct.
We were elected by this community to make policy on the direction, and that's the direction that is being suggested currently with the issuance of the bonds. I don't feel comfortable with. If we don't issue the bonds, what difference do the rating agencies make?
I think, well, there are a couple things based on what Mr. Weaver had mentioned. The idea of not holding harmless the electric fund for the way that we have characterized what amounts to a loan from electric to water. If that were not to be repaid, if electric were just going to absorb that, is it legal? I'd have to defer to Mr. Garcia, but the idea that I think that we've come across, the agreement or consensus that we have, is that that probably is legal. Is there a Prop 26 lawsuit that comes? There probably is. Is that a lawsuit that we perhaps lose? We could lose it. But to the issue of the rating agencies, if ever we have to go out for the electric utility, which, as you know, we were looking to go out for an electric bond, that rating will sink. Those funds will cost more because we will have basically written off a sizable debt that was receivable to the electric utility. So we are making a decision that feels good right now, but ultimately has repercussions.
Okay, let me ask you that we increased rates for the water. We increased the water rates.
Yes.
Did we get downgraded still?
Yes.
And what difference did it make increasing the water rates?
Because
in terms of the ratings from the ratings agencies,
I think the rating agencies look at a body of work from a given jurisdiction to say you're either on the right track, the wrong track, and that's why they give you a trend, positive or negative. And so when they look at what the practice of the utility had been previously, where I think staff had failed you in the past, was that when council made the policy decision, as you correctly point out, council's decision, made the policy decision not to issue debt, the staff continued to spend money.
Right.
That has led us to where we are right now. Now,
we were talking about the water utility, so that not all staff is put into a position.
Certainly, I appreciate that, and I think all the staff does as well. But that's when you have a toolbox full of hammers, everything looks like a nail. And we have engineers and project people, and they continue to move forward. We have, I think, rectified that problem. I think to the satisfaction, certainly as the new manager coming in, that I'm satisfied that we've rectified that problem. I think council, based on your discussions in the budget, satisfied that problem's been rectified. And in the discussions with the rating agencies, I think they're satisfied that we're on the right track. Going back to your specific question, however, I think they look back and say, yeah, you're on the right track now, but you still have to pay for the sins of the past. And I think that's what we are dealing with right now. The issue that was brought up in terms of the watch that we were put on with respect to our COPs, that's a bit of a misleading comment that was made because they pinged everybody with general fund debt in that particular go-around. We have COPs, as Mr. Elliott had indicated previously, certificates of participation. We will have to address that. I mean, that's part of a structured financing that the council and the city has done for the police building. But everybody with general fund debt got caught up in that. It doesn't really have to do with GWP at this point in time. You consider that we have $46 million in revenue as our estimate. We have 100, and if the council were to go forward here, a little over $100 million in debt between the 08 bonds, the note, such as it were, to the electrical fund, and then and then this new borrowing. Our debt service coverage is actually pretty good, which is why we're still able to carry the rating that we have. We got downgraded, but we didn't, fall off the table, which is good. It shows the strength of the utility, and it shows the conservative nature of the council. But I think, with respect to the rating agencies, they're still looking to say, okay, what's the path forward?
Is there a note between the water utility and the?
I would have to defer.
Did you?
I'd have to defer to
There's no note?
Case. There's not a note per se.
It's just an accounting entry.
Yes. Let me clarify. Let me try this one more time.
Okay.
At the end of each year, and as you can see from the cash report that we sent out, we do have, from month to month, we do have funds that have negative cash. When we come to June 30th at the end of the year, for financial statement purposes, we can't show negative cash. By definition, you can't have it. So what we do is we reverse that and book a receivable and payable combination to another fund. In June 2011, we did that between water and electric. This last June 2012, we booked the payable receivable from water and sewer. July 1 comes around, we reverse it, and water's back to having a negative cash. In a sense, what any fund that has negative cash, and obviously electric, as you can see from the report, or water, from the report, has a tremendous negative cash position at the end of the year, $23 million.
And ideally, over the next several years, what you'll see is that negative cash will decrease and then turn into a positive fund balance.
So in a sense, because we have a pooled cash environment, we're lucky in that respect. If we were a standalone water company, we'd be out mortgaging the farm to pay our operating bills. But because we have a pooled cash environment of over $300 million, the fund is able to use cash to pay its bills, but still have a negative cash. And in a sense, it's paying whatever the portfolio rate is back to all the other shareholders of the positive cash in the pool. It's just at the end of the year, we flip it around and book a receivable payable just for financial statement purposes.
I understand. It's just, I disagree with the approach. I will not be voting for the water.
Mayor, would you like it?
I just have a question. If we were to use, those funds that Mr. Mnuchin was referring to, are they in interest-bearing accounts?
Yes, they are, Councilman Friedman. There are other funds that have negative cash, and some of the ones that Mr. Mnuchin pointed out are grant funds, and oftentimes we'll go out and spend the money in a grant and then do a drawdown. So at any point in time, we can have a grant fund or a special revenue fund where we're waiting for reimbursement, whether it's from the county or the state or the federal government. Oftentimes we have to push the cash out the door first and wait for reimbursement. But all the funds in terms of the cash is in the portfolio. Mr. Baruchi invests that ongoing, and we are making approximately a whopping 1%.
Right. So I realize
yes, they are interest bearing.
I realize that it's not a lot of interest.
Right.
But I think we need to keep in mind that if we use that money, we don't get that interest. So there is some, certainly not a wash by any stretch of the imagination, but that 4%, I believe you said we'd be paying? 3.9%. Really, you could look at it more of a 2.9% because you wouldn't be, if you were to borrow that, if you were to use your cash on hand, you wouldn't be getting that 1% interest. So just want to point that out.
Well, in terms of interest, what I was suggesting is paying more to the other fund than if we're earning 1% on the funds that we're investing. If we borrow from the other fund, we could pay the other fund 5%, and that would be more than what they're earning now, and it would be more than what we would pay for the actual bonds, but we're still paying ourselves. It's like borrowing from your own pension fund.
Right.
I guess my only reluctance in that respect, Councilmember Mnuchin, is if, like we did with the radio grant, we did a 5-year loan, which was about all we wanted to go out in terms of maturity length. In this,
you're allowed unless the council votes to extend that period.
And in this case,
I looked it up.
In this case, on a 30-year, yes, sewer fund has a lot of cash, approximately $60 million, and we could do a borrowing. But again, enterprise funds are meant to stand on their own and be able to do the infrastructure improvements. So if LA Hyperion needed, I don't know, $20-30 million in a given year for our portion of that plant, it would force the sewer fund to go out and borrow the cash, and then we'd be even, or try and find another cash source internally, which would render us even more illiquid. So on anything beyond 5 years, I wouldn't recommend. 5 years or less, yeah, we can do some smaller internal borrowing, as you pointed out, in which we tried to do with did with the radio grant. But I can't. I think it's not good policy to go out beyond 5 years for an internal borrowing.
When you borrow from your own funds, you have the option of paying it sooner too, without any consequences. Actually,
I agree, and actually we have looked at doing that, but the risk is now, and the opportunity is now, with historically low interest rates, we could do an internal borrow from the sewer fund and pay a market rate back to the sewer fund. But if the sewer fund needed cash, then somebody's got to go out and borrow the money. If that was the water fund or sewer fund or a combination, we go out in the market, and if rates, in 3 or 4 years are 6%, that's where we'd be.
Can I don't want to belabor the point.
No,
but,
make your point.
we don't have to borrow $30 million from the sewer fund. We can borrow because we're not going to be able to spend $30 million in 1 year.
True.
It's not going to happen. We can borrow $15 million, and then the rest kind of save up for it so that we can pay the rest. So what I'm saying, maybe I don't have the exact answer as to how to finance these capital infrastructure improvements. However, if we think creatively within staff and the council, I think there are ways of doing it where we don't have to jeopardize any other funds, and that's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, I will also be voting against it. I have the utmost respect and sort of faith in Mr. Zern and Mr. Ochoa and Mr. Elliott. I think they're going to turn GWP around. I don't think the previous management at the very top actually did a very good job, but I think the new management has absolutely already turned it around and is headed in the right direction. But I would also like to wait before we took this step. My feeling is that the rates are going to continue to stay low, and it's something that could be examined at a later date. But I certainly understand the argument to go forward with it now. So,
and that's a good point, Mr. Mayor. I would be remiss if I did not actually thank the staff for the work they've done. I know they are genuinely concerned, and they are making the best judgment call based on the experience that you have. So thank you very much for all the information. And again, as I said in the beginning, I do appreciate the way you sent me the information when I asked for it and the exact information that I needed. So I want to thank you for that, and it's certainly appreciated. And I know that you're doing the best you can with what you have in your toolbox, I'll put it that way. So thank you.
well, and I also think that both Mr. Zern and Mr. Ochoa are taking a fresh look at GWP, and I think that's going to make a big difference. Do I have a motion?
Mayor, I move 7A, 1 and 2.
Sorry, if you move 7A first, which is the ordinance, and then after that,
That's resolution.
Well, 7A is the ordinance.
Oh.
7A 1 and 2 are the
Okay,
resolutions.
7A.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
No.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
No.
I move 7, 1,
7A 1 and 2.
7A, 1 and 2.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members: Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
No.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
No. All right, the ordinance and resolution pass. Next, please.
Under hearings at 9A is directed regarding Glendale Register of Historic Resources nomination Mills Act contract for the property located at 221 West Kenneth Road. At 9A1 is a resolution designating the property as a historic resource and authorizing Mills Act contract. 9B, there's also another public hearing, Director of Community Development as well, regarding Glendale Register of Historic Resources nomination and Mills Act contract for the property located at 1407 Imperial Drive. B1 is a resolution designating that property as a historic resource and authorizing Mills Act contract.
Yes, Mr. City Attorney, the property at 221 is owned by a close relative of mine. I have no financial interest in it. Do I have a conflict of interest?
Councilmember Nukian, you do not have a conflict of interest in the Political Reform Act. If you feel like you can't be fair, then you should recuse, but otherwise, if you can be fair, then
I think
you
I can be
you
fair.
can participate. Just
Just
for the record, Mr. Mayor, there are revised resolutions on both 9A 1 and 2, just incorporating the conditions of approval that were recommended by the HPC. So when it comes time to make motions, if you incorporate the revised resolution, that would be appreciated. Thank you. And yeah, you have to open the hearing on this one.
And let me ask you a few questions. You watch any television there?
I hang out there all the
This is a
time.
new, nice house. How many rooms?
All right.
Too many.
We'll open the public hearing.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
221 West Kenneth Road is really one of the grandest houses in Glendale. It's for your consideration for the Glendale Register nomination as well as a Mills Act contract. Historic Preservation Commission approved it unanimously and recommending it for your approval. And I have a presentation if you'd like to see it. Otherwise, I could just answer questions you have. And you should also know that the owner of the property is in the audience if you have any questions.
Beautiful house. Asked many times.
I toured this house. I think it was for sale many years ago. Mike, I'm looking for the owner to see. This house was up for sale several years ago, correct? I know. Colonial View. 4 years ago, I snuck into the open house. Beautiful house. Definitely gave me house jealousy. So I just wanted to say that.
It'd be nice to preserve it.
Yes, I agree. It is a beautiful house. Anytime out-of-towners come and I drive down Kenneth, they always turn their head to look at it. The roses are blooming. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. All right, well, I think this is going to be a unanimous...
No cards?
No, I don't have any.
Close the
I'll
hearing.
close the public hearing. Do I have a
I'll
motion?
move 9A1, and thank you for the brevity of your presentation.
Thank you, and congratulations to the owner. And Mr. Manukian's always looking for, I was going to say, Mr. Manukian always looking to exercise. You should give him a lawnmower and let him do some of the, mow the lawn.
Thank you.
Okay, roll call, please.
Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Okay, next.
Next is a property located at 1407 Imperial Drive. This is also a public hearing.
It's not a relative, no.
Right, I'll open the...
I'll be even more brief. This is a beautiful Tudor revival house on Imperial Drive. It's kind of in between Royal Boulevard Historic District and the Ross Moyne Historic District, but it's not in a historic district. Historic Preservation Commission also recommended this for your approval on a unanimous vote. And again, the owner is also in the audience if you have any questions.
I'll move 9B1 for the same reason.
Second.
Close the hearing.
No cards, and
I have no cards. I'll close the public hearing.
It's so nice to see these homes being protected forever.
With the owner's consent, I may add.
But, oh, yes.
That's what makes me happy, that the owners are into
I'm
it.
glad you're happy.
Agreed.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Second was by Councilmember Najarian. Thank you. Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Manukian,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes.
6 is oral communications. The following is a 5-minute portion. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes. Members of the council may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the city manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for an investigation and report.
Herbert Milano.
Good evening, Mr. Quintero, members of the City Council and staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I want to address a couple of things that tangentially deal with an earlier topic, but I want to address it in my impression as to how discussions take place, at least from my perspective. The general trend that I see is that when a member of the public comes before you, when I come before you and speak for 3 minutes on an item that merits a significant amount of nuance and discussion, I get generally about 30 minutes, sometimes even more, of rebuttals against my short 3-minute presentation. I sit there and I watch and listen to these presentations, and I find that a lot of the statements are oftentimes partially true, partially misleading, and oftentimes not even relevant to what I'm addressing. And I think that patently that is unfair. It occurs in just about every commission where I speak, and in every committee, including the audit committee. I sit down, city attorney comes in, and whoever represents the city attorney's office, and basically misdirects the main topic that I'm bringing forward. Okay, so let me try this again. When I sat down, the issue concerning transparency is what I was bringing up. Did we analyze and look at a trend line for the past 10 years? Concerning anything, concerning debt, infrastructure, labor, whatever. We don't get to see that. We used to. On the quarterly reports, we used to get some really nice trends up until about 2007 or so. But we don't get that. And I think it's relevant to bring those things up whenever an issue of significance comes in, especially when it comes to putting the city into debt. The CAFR is an essential document that you guys never discuss in public. discuss the budget, but the audited financial statements that come on the cover, you really don't. You don't bring up these issues, you don't discuss the trends that are there. It's full of fantastically relevant information. My point is that information being brought before the public in a way that the public truly understand? Are we really truly aware? And if I were to ask the council members today, and if you were to respond to me and say, okay, what was the city's long-term debt, bonded debt in the year 2000, what is it now? You can't tell me. Well, Mr. Manukian probably could. You know, we went from about 160 million now to what number? You don't know. And you're the decision makers. What about the rest of the public to know what is the debt overall? How about this? How about giving us a debt per household? How many households are there in Glendale? About 73,000. So I would take all of the debt, bonded debt, and say, okay, here is a debt for this family back in the year 2000, here's the debt now. That's relevant information. And that's relevant information that would come by looking at the CAFR and say, we're going to discuss it. But you don't discuss the CAFR. It comes out in December, nobody brings it up, you maybe show it and so forth, but there really isn't a discussion of the trends on how these things are impacting us. Let's talk about salaries. For police and fire, salaries make up only 2/3 of it. So if you could claim that, say, yeah, maybe this particular department had no increases, you forgot about the other 1/3, which is the benefits, but you don't bring it together. So if I were to ask you, what would be the fully burdened cost of a police officer or a police captain? Fully burdened for all the benefits and so forth. What is it today? How much does it cost us per year to maintain, the median salary of a captain today? Compare that to what it was in the year 2002. See, that's relevant information that allows us to assess what have been the trends with regard to the costs. When we pour more money into the police department and that money goes towards pensions, it does not turn into a direct benefit to the public. If we give an additional $200 million in benefits so that they can work 5 years less, that's 5 years less work in terms of safety that you're basically pulling out at an additional cost to the taxpayer, but it doesn't turn into a benefit. So when you give an earlier retirement, when you give a greater benefit, when you support the losses that occurs on the pension system, that doesn't turn into additional benefits. We are not safer because of that. And that's what I'm talking about, a relevant discussion of what has transpired. This does not have to do with anger or with issues with any single one particular council member. This has to do about a policy of transparency and relevant information that the public deserves. Thank you.
That's my final card.
I think Mr. Ochoa wanted to respond.
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead.
Popular CAFR that we do, that's prepared every year, it has in it the $508 million that the city carries as long-term debt. It's a public document. I don't know if we have it up on our web. We should. Is it? It's up on the web now. It's been up on the web. That comes out, all of that information, the fully burdened cost, the trend line from 10 years ago to this current year. The council considered all of that during this year's budget. So appreciate the insights and the commentary, but it's been done by the council.
If I also can make a comment as well. On a daily basis, I don't know the exact debt of the city, or even on a monthly basis, but I have to qualify that by saying that whenever there's an issue that comes up relating to debt that the city has to, or the city council has to cast a vote on, I certainly will ask all the questions and find out the overall debt burden, as well as what that, as you saw today, what that debt will do to the overall funds that we're looking at. So maybe on a daily basis, I don't keep it in my mind, but I will certainly, when it comes up as an issue, I will certainly inquire about it.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? We are adjourned.
Don't forget to vote.
Still open till
Still
8.
time.